We have now spent more than a day focused on the theme, Stewards of our world. We've looked at the theme from many perspectives. Perhaps it is left to an event called a spiritual service to place our stewardship in the broadest context. And so for that, I've turned to the Greeks, who have given us 4 words which inform us today. The first of these is oikos. Oikos is a Greek word for house. Neither Greek nor Hebrew have a separate word for family, so oikos means house and family both. If you live under the same roof with me, you are part of my family. So another word for oikos is household, a group of people who share a place. This weekend, we at this Woodstock reunion are an oikos gathered together. But oikos can be bigger even than this. In the 20th century, we realized that the household can extend to all of humanity. The term Spaceship Earth became popular after a 1965 speech in which Adlai Stevenson said, "We travel together, passengers on a little spaceship, depending on its vulnerable reserves of air and soil." Spaceship Earth conveys the image that all of us are in this together, that our lives together are bound together with all living things and the resources that sustain them. It gives the sense of the life and death importance, and yet the fragility of what carries us through the vastness of space. From the smallest hut to the universe itself, oikos is our house and our household. Oikos. A second Greek word is built on the first, oikodome. Literally, oikodome means building a house. We are here this weekend because those who founded Woodstock took seriously the matter of building lives. In the years that we were at Woodstock, oikodome was going on. This weekend here in Seattle, we continue to build our lives and our universe. Who builds a house? For many of us, that who is God. In the stories of the Bible, it is God who created the earth. In a verse familiar to many of us, the psalmist reminds us, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain." Today in our Woodstock gatherings, we have people from many faith traditions, and in our experiences since Woodstock, most of us have found faith pathways of our own. I would suggest that regardless of our faith tradition, the most important thing that each of us can know about the builder of the house in which we live is this: we are not self-created, and we are not God. We did not change our own diapers. In the face of the green of a forest, the thunder of a waterfall, the symphony of birds, we face the truth that we live in a house that we did not create. We do not need to be clear about who put all of this together to recognize that it is not us. And yet, our traditions insist that we share with the creators before us the impulse and capacity to build. The first scripture of Christians and Jews asserts that we are created in the image of the Creator, and so we are creators ourselves. In another picture from Genesis, the one who created the universe asks the first human to sit with God and name, to assign meaning and value to the animals. One of the things most of us learned at Woodstock was that God works not only through acts of nature, but through acts of committed and caring people. If it was the Lord building our house, it was through our parents and teachers and other adults and even our schoolmates that the work took place. In the years since, each of us has grown up in that oikos called Woodstock. We've taken our place among those who contribute to building the house, and the sessions of this weekend testify to the range that covers. Building the house, oikodome. When the house is built, the household must be managed. Oikonomia means management of the house. Oikos, house, nomia, law. So literally, oikonomia means law of the household, and if you guessed that this is where we get our word economy, you guessed right. The words we heard a few minutes ago, words attributed to Chief Seattle, speak to the law of our terrestrial household. How can you buy the earth? How can you sell the sky? The origin of those words tells us something critically important about oikonomia. Chief Seattle did not write them. He did not speak English. His tradition was oral, not written. The Port Elliott Treaty between Chief Seattle and the Americans, a treaty in which the Indians of this area gave up most of their land, said to be the occasion for the words, took place in 1855. The slaughter of buffalo from passing trains mentioned in the speech didn't take place until the 1860s. The speech talks about the hustle and bustle of the white man's cities with which Chief Seattle himself was unfamiliar when the treaty was signed. The words first appeared in the Seattle Sunday Star in 1887 by a Dr. Henry A. Smith, writing under the heading of Reminiscences. It was he who attributed them to Chief Seattle. Many words were written in the 1880s and never read again. But this speech appeared and reappeared in different forms. In 1932, a variation by John Rich appeared as Chief Seattle's unanswered challenge. In 1969, American poet and writer William Arrowsmith published his own version, modernizing the English. In the early 1970s, Ted Perry, a scriptwriter contracted by the Southern Baptist Radio and Film Commission, wrote another version, incorporating modern ecological sentiments and making the references to God friendlier to the white man. Perry's submission acknowledged his own role in the writing, but the Film Commission chose to leave that out. What on earth is going on here? Why would words written by various people in one culture and attributed to the leader of another culture gain such currency? Some ideas come to mind. You'll have to decide for yourselves whether any of these ideas make sense to you. Have you noticed that when we feel proud of something, we claim it? We believe this. We did that. But when we feel uncomfortable, when something isn't right, when we feel guilt, when we feel shame, then perhaps we feel the need to be talked to. Ultimately, the speech attributed to Chief Seattle may or may not be about his culture's values, but it is about our culture's shame. Like children who have misbehaved, we look at our environment and feel the need of a good talking to. So we create Chief Seattle as a parental figure or even a God figure. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land, the swiftness of the antelope? This fictional Chief Seattle says. And then he might go on to say, my children, what on earth were you thinking of when you cut down the trees, when you filled the water with your waste and treated the earth like a commodity? An even better view builds on this. The American Indians did not give outsiders their land. We here are the cultural descendants of those who took the land by conquest or by threat of conquest. To the extent that the ways of our group are contrasted with theirs, then, there is the subliminal message that our ways, however bad, are the ways of winners, and their ways, however good, are the ways of losers. Thus, Chief Seattle's speech cleverly does two things at once. It speaks nostalgia for a different time when things were beautiful, and at the same time invalidates those things by putting them in the mouth of one whom we conquered. Ultimately, it may come to the contrast between admiration and ownership. Putting the thoughts on the lips of a Chief Seattle permits us to admire them, but not make them our own. We have admired these thoughts in this morning's reading for over 100 years now. They speak to an oikonomia that respects our environment in ways that our own ways do not. Our challenge now is to make these words our own and embed its oikonomia in our own culture. While economy is the English word directly derived from oikonomia, oikonomia is most often translated as stewardship. Oikonomia. There is a fourth Greek word derived from oikos, oikonomos. We would translate it today as manager. In older days, it was steward. Stewardship is the management of resources on behalf of their owner. Personally, I believe the owner is God. But who you believe is the owner is not essential to how well you behave as steward. I think God would favor an atheist who respects God's creation and does God's will over a theist who does not. Last Sunday, I sat with a group from two congregations in Maryland, wondering what we might do in practical ways to express our shared faith and love for the environment. What can guide us in our stewardship? We realize that in the very language that regards a golden field and babbling brook as unimproved, and a freshly paved parking lot as improved, we have another vision competing with ours. In the face of competing visions, good stewardship requires that we manage ideas as well as resources, not only what we see, but how we see it. I use the Quicken Financial Management program on my computer. Quicken will print out a sheet entitled Net Worth. Net worth is what you have left after you subtract liabilities from assets. It's satisfying, and it's a sign of good stewardship if you come up with a positive number. But if I were to take Quicken's picture of my net worth as the answer to life's most important questions, I would go far astray. Where among the assets is the cooling tree in front of our townhouse or the forest behind it? Where is the air that I breathe or the water in the stream down the hill? Where among the assets are my granddaughters? Where among the assets are all the other people who know me and surround me and love me? And where among the liabilities is the damage that we are doing to our world and the truth that we will not, in fact, be leaving it to our children greater, better, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us? I just spent a week in Scranton, Pennsylvania with 100 teenagers from church congregations scattered from Boston, Massachusetts to Huntsville, Alabama, listening to the thanksgiving for nature and the contemporary hymns they sing, and seeing them rushing in to clear debris from a flood-damaged house on a scalding hot day, I realize that they get it. They get the importance of the environment and the importance of stewardship of our world. I left them to come here, hopeful that this generation will be able to accomplish what we could not. And here, listening to accounts of today's young people at today's Woodstock, I feel the same hope. But they will need the undergirding of a vision of wholeness, of stewardship that loves and respects our environment and successfully competes with a competing vision of reckless mastery and consumption. Oikonomos. These 4 Greek words speak that vision of wholeness to us. Oikos, house. We are part of something bigger than we are, a household that stretches from family to school to community to universe. A household that includes all life and the source of life. Oikodome, building the house. We are not the builders of the universe, but we are co-makers of its future, co-builders with the God of all things visible and invisible. What we do makes a difference, for good or ill. Oikonomia. Our cosmic household has rules for its well-being, which we did not create. Rules which we must discover, rules that we must observe, rules that we must defend against competing visions. Oikonomos. We are responsible. We are stewards of our world.